Alright, welcome back. This is a review for Fruits Basket 2019, episode 18. And in this episode, we finally get to meet KIsa, the little tiger. She's so cute and adorable. I told you last episode that Toru's reaction to KIsa is exactly what my reaction, and probably a lot of other people's reaction is to KIsa as well. She's just so cute, and she just needs lots of hugs. She just needs to be loved on. She's just too cute. um... Now, anyway, but in terms of this episode compared to the manga and the previous series, this episode this there's only one thing in terms of manga wise that's slightly different, and that's just that this episode, the introduction of KIsa is actually supposed to happen like right after they go to the lake. So, because the lake was supposed to be at the beginning of Golden Week, and then Instruction and KIsa is supposed to be at like the end of Golden Week, but it's whatever, it's fine. But other than that, it's just like the manga. Now, in terms of the 2001 anime, it plays out just the same, with the exception of that some of the lines in the manga / in the 2019 version that were Yuki's lines, things that Yuki said, were actually given to other characters. So like when Toru is talking, when she finds KIsa, and her mom comes up and she's talking, and then Yuki shows up in the 2019 version. Toru's initially talking about the bullying and how she's probably feeling and whatnot, and then in the 2019 version it switches over to Yuki kind of speaking pretty much what Toru's saying, or thinking what Toru's saying about, in this case, about himself. But in the 2001 version, they just kept it that as Toru just talking, and they kept it as Toru's dialogue. So it kind of changes the episode a little bit, because instead of it being just a pure, this is episode about KIsa, like that's how the 2001 version had it, this episode is about KIsa, but it's also just as equally about Yuki as well. And so it's interesting to see that. Anyway, so we get, but the episode itself is also probably it's a good episode. It has another one of my favorite sayings from Fruits Basket in it. So we get it starts off, and it's Yuki and Toru talking about he's gonna the current student council president wants Yuki to become the next student council president. Yuki's like, I don't really want to. It doesn't really seem to fit me. That sort of thing doesn't really seem to fit me. At least in my opinion, it doesn't. At least that's how he feels. And then of course we run into KIsa with Hatsuharu there. And then we find out, that, she hasn't really been talking. She hasn't talked since middle school, and that's because since she's pretty much gotten into middle school. And that's because she's being bullied. And then you find out more information about that later. Where, with Momiji being like, yeah, she was, I heard from some of the ladies, some of like the maids and whatnot at the Soma estate, that that she started off as people picking on her hair and eye color, and her being like, well, I can't do anything about that. And then they started just ignoring her, and then anytime she tried to speak, they'd laugh and snicker at her. So eventually she just became quiet and then ran away from home, and so on and so forth. And you get this, but going back, because I jumped forward there. But you get this little scene where, which I actually really liked this, but I liked how I liked how this entire episode was done better than I liked how the 2001 version how the 2001 version did it, because when Toru is explaining, going, yeah, this is probably how KIsa felt about this entire situation to KIsa's mother. You actually do get to see a reaction out of KIsa's mother, to where it looks like she starts kind of tearing up. which they didn't really have in the 2001 version. They just kind of had her staring, and they zoomed in on her face or whatever, from what I remember. But this one, it's like, okay, you actually kind of see a reaction out of Kisa's mother, and I really like that. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, as an adult, you look at this situation and go, well, yeah, she should have told her mom. She should have told someone that she was being bullied. But you also have to come back and think of it from a child's perspective of, you're being bullied, you're being, all this stuff is happening to you. And especially it's definitely hard for those of the Soma. And she felt like, if I tell my mom, she might hate me as well if I try to do that. So she was scared too. And then once Kisa's mother kind of comes to understand that, she goes, okay, but she still has to take a little break. But she still calls up. She still calls, so Kisa stays there with us, Toru and whatnot, for the next couple of days. But her mother still calls up to check up on her, which is something that's really sweet, and it's good. And it's like, okay, that not only makes, as us viewers go, okay, it reassures us that, okay, she's not going to have the same fate as Momiji does. But it also, of course, makes Momiji happy when he hears Toru say that Kisa's mother's been calling, because he goes, okay, so she won't be like me, where her mother will forget about her or anything like that. But this episode, the only thing, actually, I just thought it's the only other thing that's not in the other, also the other thing that's not in the 2001 version is that very brief glimpse, or kind of that brief dialogue with Yuki and Shigure, where Shigure like kind of gets he gets his little manipulative self again, and he's like, oh, what are you? He pretty much does to Yuki what he did to Kyo back during the Valentine's Day episode, where he's like, oh, what, are you ashamed? Do you feel are you ashamed for how you acted back then? And Yuki's like, yes. And it's, I don't know, it's interesting seeing that, and that it's, because again, this episode, even though it's about Kisa, it's also equally just about Yuki, and Yuki kind of realizing, hey, I need him coming to terms with, that he's also a weak person, and then him relating to Kisa in a lot of ways, and at the same time also encouraging Kisa, being like, hey, I'm just like you, and we're gonna get this stuff together. You're not alone in this fight of, feeling the way that you do, of feeling ashamed for not being strong. That's actually another quote that I really like, that, Yuki brings up to Toru, and he's like, hey, it's, they say it's survival of the fittest and all this stuff, but like, we're human, we're not animals. Even us of the Zodiac, we're human, right? And of course Toru reassures him instantly. He's like, yeah, you guys are human. You're not animals. You are human. Which is really, again, that's another of my favorite. That's another little kind of somewhat little favorite quote. But before I actually get into the big quote which is kind of what then encapsulates this entire episode, I want to bring up the fact that I really wish this is just me in general, I really wish we got more Kyo and Kisa interaction, because they've both turned into the cats, and it's been so much more fun if they had gotten more interaction, because it's just so cute being like, they're both from the cat family, And it even seems like Kyo is like, oh, hey, when he finds out that Kisa's supposed to be there, he's like, it even seems like he's curious as to where she's at, because, she's another cat, and so it's like, I don't know, it's just fun, it's just cute. I will say one of the other things that I really like is, again, they added another subtle little reaction in that, because it doesn't seem like, if you watch the episode, it doesn't really seem like they're telling Kyo what's going on with Kisa. It just seems like, oh, they just told him that she's here. Her mother seemed like she was oops, sorry. They're like, she's here. Her mother just seems like she's on the verge of, just really tired out and whatnot. And that's really all they tell him. And so you have that scene where Kyo's like, oh hey, like can't you even tell us what you want to eat? And then Kisa has this kind of like really saddened negative reaction to it. And then Kyo kind of has this surprise, like, oh wait, did I just say something that I shouldn't have? Because I don't think they've told him that what was going on with Kisa in terms of her not talking. Um, so it's like I just wish Kyo and Kisa got more interaction because it's really cute. Just because they're both cats. Anyway, so we get the big main line of this entire episode, which is something that I always thought of which is the she Kisa gets a letter from her homeroom teacher saying, oh hey, like we want you should come back to school soon. You should really try to find the good points about yourself because like how are people going to like you if you can't like yourself first and all that sort of stuff. And Yuki's like, I don't really think it works that way. I really don't. Which I agree with because it's something that you always hear it. I've always heard it growing up, on like TV shows and movies. Like, oh, you gotta love yourself first if you want others to love you back. And it's like that may work for some people who may not have like maybe like a self-esteem issue or anything like that, or like a self-hatred issue. But there are people, in this case, two examples are shown right here in the episode, being Yuki and Kisa, who they struggle with finding the good aspects about themselves. And so telling them to love themselves, as Yuki says, how are you supposed to love yourself if you can't find those things, and the things that you do find, it just feels like you're making them up as if they're false. And I understand that because I'm somewhat of a kind of a humble person. I don't really like to brag about myself or anything. So like I'm pretty sure like you'll get those little questions like if you're like taking a little questionnaire or something about that or something like that. It'll be like, oh hey, like what are the good aspects about yourself? And I'm always like, I don't really know what to say because it just feels like I know that I'm not making things up because I'm like, I know what the good aspects of myself are, but sometimes I understand that feeling because it's like sometimes it does feel like, well, am I making these things up? And so and so I don't really think I have much of a self-hatred issue, at least not to the extent, definitely not in the way that Yuki and Kisa do. Um, and so for them, I can understand that, yeah, just trying to come up with anything that they can think of that's good about themselves, I can understand that, yeah, to them it really would feel like they are making things up. And so for them, it's like, no, as Yuki says, it doesn't really work that way. You need someone else to come in and say, hey, I like you. I love these things about you. In order for you to really kind of start liking yourself and really knowing what your good qualities are. In a lot of ways, this actually relates right back to Toru's rice ball analogy back in episode 3, where she's going, yeah, there are definitely going to be some of those rice balls that they look at themselves, go, I'm plain white rice, but then they can look at themselves also and say, these are my good qualities. They can find the strength in order to be able to say that, hey, these are my good qualities, and be confident in that and not think that they're just making it up. But then you're also going to have some other rice balls who are going, they don't have the strength to be able to do it. They don't have the strength or the confidence to be able to go, yeah, you know what? These are my good qualities, and I know that I'm not making them up. But they don't have that sort of strength to be able to do that, and so they just look at themselves and go, I don't have any good qualities. And it takes someone else to say, no, you have a plum on your back. These are your good qualities, and I like you for these things, in order for them to really start liking themselves and understanding themselves better. Um, but it's again, this is another one of my little favorite quotes in the series, and it's a very sweet episode, and it's a very sweet quote. It's a very sweet episode in general as well. And of course, at the end, we get the little fun little, I wouldn't say fun, but also another little cool little dialogue where it's like, Yuki goes out and he's like, he accepts the position as, or kind of accepts the position to be the next student council president, which is, he still technically has to get elected, but whatever. They don't make a big deal out of it. And then KIsa also steps out and tries to gather the strength, and she goes back to school. And as Yuki says in this entire ending sequence, it's not like anything's changed. It's not like all of a sudden everything's better and everything's perfect and everything's okay. It's just that that weakness that they have can be used as a strength. It's something that, yeah, it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. And of course, as Yuki says to KIsa, it's not going to be easy going back to school, but if you ever, and you may, or in this case, KIsa says, I may not ever be able to make friends again. They may not ever be nice to me. I may still continue to be bullied and alone, but I have to try at least, or else or else things are just gonna get worse for me. And of course, Yuki says back, yeah, and of course, if you ever feel like you know where to go, you know who to come to if you ever need more encouragement, if you ever need to be felt like, to be reassured in your existence that yes, you are in fact loved, that you do have good qualities, you know who to come back to. Of course, talking about Toru. Other than that, no, I kind of went on, but it's a really sweet episode and has some really different little dynamic things in there. It's adorable episode. Anyway, but that's really about it. Next episode is going to be pretty interesting. I'll either mention it in the next episode or maybe the next episode after that, depending. But it's going to be interesting. The next episode is going to be fun. But that's really about it. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.